Imagine two banks. Both employ helpful people who deal with your questions, and both are financially sound. At each bank, you can save regularly, earn interest, and of course manage your account online. Only one bank does it differently. This bank only invests in things which are good for both people and the planet. Things like renewable energy, organic farming, and ecological development. This bank invests in businesses that want to make a healthy profit and want to make a positive difference to society. This bank finances those businesses only with money from their depositors and investors. So the money those people save is invested back into the society they live in. It's actually very simple. Both savers and investors help to build a better, more sustainable world. That one bank is us. Follow your heart, use your head. Triodos Bank.
Thank you for inviting me to talk today. I was going to talk. Does the clicker work? Click. Oh, there we go. I was going to talk about green banking, and in a way, I think there's a bit of a transformation happening in terms of us having a conference today. It's all about green tourism, and people are beginning to make the associations now in terms of green and tourism, and green banking probably sounds a bit of a step further away. And so I'm going to start unpacking a little bit about, well, what on earth could that mean? And also, well, green banking, green for who? Is it green for your business or green for your customers? So I want to take a little bit of a journey and just kind of reflecting sort of what happens in terms of progress and how transformations occur. Take, for example, the image of a traditional British holiday. A few years back, that kind of was the rather garish image of the traditional British holiday. But something in the zeitgeist, something has changed in terms of connecting to nature, connecting the things which are much more authentically part of us, connecting to the beauty that's around us, and being able to have a stillness and an appreciation for things which maybe have been overlooked. And that's something which probably most people in this room are in some way directly engaged with. But it hasn't always been this way. If you take, for example, and we've had lots of people already mentioning waste management and composting. I mean, in a way, rubbish used to just look like this. And waste has kind of transformed now to people quite, in a way, sort of habitually, and almost without thinking, just imagining that, well, everything should just be looking in a smart, ordered, recycling fashion, something which is kind of directly ordered and is being able to be in tune with the world around us. My slide on banking is actually this one. Because in a way, if you looked at what happened to banking, it's something which we didn't really understand fully. We kind of put it out like the bin bags. It was out of sight and out of mind. But in a way, about sort of 5-6 years ago, with the onset of the financial crisis, we realized that it's actually quite messy. And we're a little bit guilty about the fact that it's out there and it's beginning to smell bad. But we haven't quite figured out, well, what is the transformation required to get to an ordered system which actually is in tune with what we want, where we can put things where we want things to go. And this is the transformation that Triodos Bank is trying to put into the world, to sort of look at, well, what can we do to support other people in using a system? We're not doing it by our own. Recycling bins, compost doesn't make itself. We have to interact with it within a human system which is fully integrated. But what on earth does that look like? Well, for those of you thinking, you know, this might just kind of feel like it's just way too far into sort of almost the realms of science fiction, I just want to talk about some of the transformations which have happened in society. We've talked about people marketing and social media. We kind of maybe forget that when I started working with Triodos Bank, I built the first Triodos Bank website. Most banks and most tourism places when I started, which was 16 years ago, kind of just were at the first phases of getting a website. It was only a few years after that Google was started. Google is now a word in the dictionary and is now a verb. Facebook and Twitter, this is floating this week, have only been on the scene for 7-8 years. But the people in the next generation, the youngsters, are kind of not even using email anymore, because email, just for those in your room who think they're really smart for using email, is passé and is no longer part of the future. And these things happen almost unconsciously. Bill Gates actually said that in the short term, things never quite change as much as you want them to, but in the long term, things change far quicker than you'd ever imagine. And so it is with this kind of notion of change that we start off with this curve of change, which many of you are familiar with, where we start off with unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we can't do right. And in some ways, the rubbish image here is kind of, that's what this picture looks like. We don't know where our rubbish goes. It just goes in the bin. We don't know where our energy comes from. You know, that power station over there isn't connected. We don't know where our food is grown. We don't know all of these kind of the places where we're actually connected, and we don't know therefore how to change the system. And then at some point we get confronted with a difficult image. We suddenly see where the rubbish goes. We suddenly see where the energy comes from, how food is being produced. All of these systems start to become visible, and at some point we get this really uncomfortable notion that we're not an island. We are actually somehow connected to this. And then you go to the stage where it's just like, okay, so you might just want to go, okay, just shut the door on that and just let's push that away. And then you can travel back down the hill and rest in that space. But at a certain moment, you cross into trying out competence. And at first, it's a very conscious, it's a very exerted, it's a very deliberate step to work out, right, I've got this red, green, and the green bin and the compost, and I've got to do something in a different way, and I've got to learn a new habit. But actually that stage doesn't last for as long as you all probably fear. And then when you get over that stage, you get into unconscious competence where it's just in flow. And then suddenly you realize it, but you don't even necessarily realize that you're doing it. You're doing it without necessarily the effort. And things are working in a good order, and you're feeling good about the system that you're in. And that, in a way, is what we're wanting to see transform the finance sector, in terms of, well, where does money go? Where does it come from? How does it use? Rather than this sense of not having any agency in this system which is financing the bad things in the world which we feel uncomfortable about despite our own local efforts. So we might change our own light bulbs, but at the same time our money is financing the extraction of fossil fuels. We might be trying to do our best to think about procurement, whereas the finance system is procuring far more than we all ever could on an individual basis, to go through to changing habits, to be able to use the finance system in a different way so that things are aligned with our principles, with our values, which actually make things easier. And it's an interaction. We have to do something on a daily basis to keep resources being used in an efficient way. We have to also be able to do that with finance. So Triodos Bank is a bank which finances specifically and exclusively organizations, businesses and charities who are trying to do something positive in the world, and that's from a social, environmental and cultural point of view. So, for example, we finance renewable energy schemes, we finance organic farms, we finance charities, social enterprises across the UK, also across Europe. And we're 100% transparent about it because we feel that as a bank, we only rely upon two things. We rely upon people we're lending money to and the people who lend us their money. That is what deposits in banks are. They're you lending us money to do something with. For us to use that money responsibly to grow something in the system which is actually sustainable, that allows you to be paid back, which you're all kind of relying upon because it's your savings, and that is something which is in the world which is also predicated on something which is fundamentally sustainable and helps build the world that you want to see around you. So it's all around this notion of progress, things which aren't quite working in the right way in the system and trying to push the system on, trying to reach a progression. And that is why we finance green tourist businesses. And that's why we have partnered with Green Tourism Business Scheme to be able to help people like you who are in that stage to help finance developments, finance your businesses, finance improvements in energy efficiency, in food, in renewable energy generation, all those kind of developments which we see as delivering progress. And through the certifications, and we work, for example, with businesses who, when they're looking to try and move to the next grade up, so take the step from a silver to a gold, to really be beacons and leaders within their field, we know that's going to take investment, so we would apply a percentage discount to the loan to help that on. And in a way that's a gesture, but it's in a way a supportive gesture to see, well, what can we do as a finance organisation to help support the leadership initiatives from entrepreneurs like you trying to move things on in every single way within your business. And that's why we think that sustainable banking is not a load of rubbish. It might not be an image, this one on the right, which is the thing that gets you out of bed every morning, because recycling isn't the most exciting thing which happens in the world, and banking isn't the most exciting thing, but it is something which fundamentally we have to get right to feel that we are aligned individuals and that we are all interconnected, and that we've also got more chance of doing things in a way which we can actually be more creative because we feel on a more stable platform. So, sustainable banking is about financing your business. It's financing developments in your business, and for that you need money. But it's not just the money that we bring. Through being specifically concentrated in areas and sectors, we have expertise through just talking to lots of you, understanding what your issues are, being able to connect the network so that we can say, actually, this seems very similar to another client who's gone through that, and they had some issues with suppliers which are actually not too distant to the things which you're describing. Why don't we connect you? Because if we connect you and you learn, you become healthier businesses, and helping you to become healthier businesses make it better for a bank to be able to lend. And it's not just about the expertise in the network, but it's about these relationships. It's about being able to connect to you and to really understand your motivations, what your plans are for the future, and to be a speaking partner. Because if you can get those developments right and be able to connect what you most want to do in terms of your own vision to the commercial realities, it's more likely to happen. And for us, it's all about being able to make this happen in practice. Because if it doesn't happen in practice, it's not really worth it. It has to be made real, because then you can actually get the outputs of sustainability which you're aiming for. I'm going to now talk through some examples of businesses who we finance, and that's really speaking to the first part of my title, which was green banking for your business. But I want to also in some ways connect to a bigger question, which is, what's the context of sustainable banking in society? Because at a certain moment, although it's absolutely got to the point where people have reached an unconscious competence about recycling, say, they're just at that foothills of understanding where finance fits into the sustainability picture. And these people, the populace, these are your customers. And so this is maybe something that you need to be thinking about around how you're relating to your own customers. So, a few examples of businesses. River Cottage Canteen. I picked this because it's one that people will probably know, because Hugh Fernie-Whittingstall is a very public face. But River Cottage is actually an amazing entrepreneurial business. It's not just a destination in terms of Park Farm, who've developed a cookery school and now looking at developing accommodation. They have a canteen and deli business, which we help raise money for. They're also doing lots of things which are looking to, again, extend sustainability through being able to communicate, because there's a production company behind it. They've taken on issues like welfare animal welfare and sustainable fishery, and being able to look at how these issues connect to public understanding, which also supports them at a business, but it's all integrated in terms of their philosophy. And they've just opened up a Canteen Deli business in Bristol, which some of you may know. A different type of business, far away from here, but still within the UK, but not on the mainland, the Isle of Mull. There's a customer there who is a family who are all about trying to preserve tradition, but not about preserving tradition in a let's just conserve and put the walls up and stick to old habits, but really in a very entrepreneurial way. So the Isle of Mull cheese are artisan cheese makers. The Island Bakery bake organic biscuits, which are now just announced going to be stocked in Marks and Spencer's. They have self-catering accommodation. They've got a hydro plant. They're looking at wind energy. They're incredibly dynamic. And it's about how do you keep local traditions alive by finding a sense of renewal. And that is all about entrepreneurialism. And it's about being able to step with these entrepreneurs who are our customers, who we've been through in these different steps in the journey, and to be able to keep supporting them so that they can keep people on the island, keeping in local traditional employment and extending the diversity of things which are on their island for the benefit of the people who live there and the people who visit there. High Bickington is an example of a community land trust. So this is a group, this is almost like the original big society for the people who don't really care what the politicians call it. This is a group of people who are really determining local development through developing low-cost, affordable housing, community buildings, a school, playing field, community woodland, looking at how they integrate renewable energy. These are a group of people who are saying, rather than just having development as being something which is done to us, how can we look at the needs of our local community and develop it in the way that we want to go through? They're an example of community land trusts amongst many that we're working with across the country, and are really leaders within their field and are inspiring others. And they're ones who we're frequently in conversation with other community land trusts up and down the UK about how they can determine local development. I'll scoot through a couple of others. My clicker works. So Topsfield Community Pub. A story up and down the country is that communities are losing their local pubs. And a lot of that is to do with the ownership of pubcos and chains, where actually the community aspect has really been undermined for too long. But in a few examples, like this one, which is in Essex, groups of individuals can say, well, actually, this is really important, and our village really requires us to kind of keep this community hub alive. So how can we do it? We need to buy a brick's worth of this and to keep it open. So they raised £150,000 from their local village, and with a loan from the bank and some support there, we're able to keep this alive as a community venture. And this takes us to Wheatland Farm, which is an award-winning tourism business. And for this, I'd like to talk through and invite to stage Ian Ripper, who's from Wheatland Farm, to talk a little bit about what he's been doing in a live case study. Ian.